There are so many things to stress about when it comes to international travel. And with my upcoming Europe trip, you know what I'm not stressing about? Finding Wi-Fi or getting scammed on overpriced SIM cards. I'm using Saily, the eSIM app that keeps you connected in over 200 countries without the airport hassle or those ridiculous roaming fees. It's made by the folks behind NordVPN, so privacy and security covered. You install Saily once, pick a plan, and you're good to go. Whether you're hopping countries or just need solid data from the moment you land. And bonus, Saily has a built-in ad blocker that can save you up to 28% on mobile data. That's more scrolling and less wasting data. So if you're traveling soon, do this now. Download the Saily app in your app store and use the code DATEABLE at checkout for 15% off your first data plan. That's DATEABLE for 15% off. Stay connected, stay smart, get Saily. Did you know you can eat healthy without giving up flavor or fun? I didn't know that until I discovered Washington Red Raspberries. They're a clean, simple, and seriously delicious way to add more nutrition to your day. American grown by American farmers, picked at peak ripeness, and frozen within hours to lock in nutrients like fiber, antioxidants, and vitamin C. Washington Red Raspberries have no added sugar, just fruit, as nature intended. I love eating a handful as a snack throughout my day, and if I'm feeling fancy, I'll swirl some into yogurt or top off a salad. They're such a great summer treat. I won't gatekeep this anymore. Frozen Washington Red Raspberries are one of the best kept secrets in the freezer aisle, and make sure to look for Product of the U.S. on the bag. Want to discover new ways to use American frozen red raspberries and get more details on where you can grab a bag of these delicious berries? Go to redraz.org. That's redrazz.org. You'll find recipes, health tips, retail locations, and everything you need to make frozen Washington red raspberries a regular part of your routine. Hi, I'm Yue Xu.
And I'm Julie Kraftchick.
We're active daters turned dating insiders.
Here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
Welcome to Dateable. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to another episode of Dateable.
Welcome back to Julie's last episode as a single woman.
It really major milestone. I was going to say welcome back from your European vacation. There's so many welcome backs.
How does it feel? How does it feel?
Still hasn't registered. So when this episode airs, we're doing it a week before. It'll be the week of the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
There was a point when it went from, oh, your wedding's so far away to, holy shit, it's coming. And I don't know when that inflection point was, but it feels like it happened overnight.
I feel like for me, it definitely was like the last month. I was like, okay, all this like little stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think it still hasn't fully hit me that it's like,
yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, like this coming
It's happening.
Like that has not, I think it has not fully hit me, but yeah, it's coming.
What do you think is the most surprising little thing that you've had to take care of in the last month that you didn't think about before? Like your seat arrangement for the rehearsal dinner. Did you think about, was that like a thing you thought about before?
I mean, I knew I'd have to do it.
Okay. Well, that was a little surprising to me.
Oh, that there would be like a seating arrangement?
Yeah. For your rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
Any other little things you're surprised by?
That I want to say on air? No.
I think we just keep that. Just leave it at that, and we know. We're good.
No, it's coming. I think maybe the surprise is how fast the last 8 months have flown by. I really don't think I could have done this for more than 8 months.
No? Why? You don't want more time?
No. I kind of wish I did it in like 6 months.
Yeah? It's just better to just cram it all in,
I think
right?
so.
Yeah.
For me, it is. I don't know. It's a lot of work, actually. And I feel maybe the biggest surprise is that I thought I was going to be that person that could just like do it chill and casual. And I wasn't able to do that.
Every bride is like, no, I'm going to be totally cool and like relaxed about it. And then when you're actually doing it, it's a whole different story.
I said it to my mom and she's like, yeah, you have not.
It was a good intention.
It was a good intention. Tried.
But it's finally happening.
It
you
is.
Must be excited.
Very excited.
And you have friends and family already in town or getting ready.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a whole week celebration.
It's going to go by fast. That's what everyone says, how quickly it goes by. Yeah. But I'm excited for like the things leading up to it too, and just
being with your family and friends.
I know. I'm like, please do not get sick. That's all I'm hoping
for. Yes. Oh, yeah. I followed this girl on Instagram who had a stomach bug the night before her wedding.
That's horrible.
She's like, I'm going to power through. I'm going to make it.
That's my biggest fear. I'm just drinking like a lot of electrolytes.
Yes. Don't be in crowds.
No, I'm hibernating.
Yeah. Hibernate. Yep. Take all your vitamins. Yeah. Good. Well, that'd be fun.
And let's do a little recap of your vacation. Your big trip.
Yes. Very good vacation. I think it was the perfect combination of everything I wanted. A little bit of soul searching, physical health and mental health. I went from Amsterdam to a beach town in Mallorca and then to Brussels, which is like a big city. So I feel like I had a nice combination of everything I want in one trip. So overall, definitely a big success. I'm happy for everything that happened, even though my bags are still in Amsterdam.
Oh, shoot. They did not make it back?
No, I had a really short connection from Brussels to Amsterdam. So my bag didn't I made it, but my bag didn't make it. That's okay. I'm tracking it on my tracker, and I just think about like how much fun my bag is having in Amsterdam right now.
That's a good way to do it. But it will make its way back eventually.
It will. Yes. But I guess the highlight of the whole trip, there were so many highlights, but I've always loved my Valley events, so that was really great in Amsterdam. But the tennis camp, and I won't bore anybody with the details, but feel free to DM me if you're ever interested in doing this tennis camp. I thought it was brilliantly done. But there was a group, like a couple in my group that just seemed different. And turns out he's like a big deal. He's like the owner of a big cosmetics company. Yeah, who was in our group. And he was so down to earth and so cool, but multi-billionaire, like came on his private jet. So that was probably the highlight of being in such close proximity to someone of that caliber, right? And that was really fun.
Nice. So maybe share a little with people, because I'm curious too. I mean, we talked about it, but like you ended up doing this talk at Mind Valley, and it looked pretty legit for the videos. It like looks like you were doing a TED Talk.
Yeah, I think about 150 people showed up, which is awesome. I think that's the most I've ever spoken to as a crowd. And it was the perfect audience for something like this. I spoke about conscious pre-coupling plus like this idea of trial relationships and having a love prenup. So kind of like talking about the ending of your relationship before you even start the relationship, just to normalize that things end, and also doing this like 30-day trial and then taking your relationship into 90-day sprints. And I didn't know if people really understand the concept of sprints, but at Mind Valley, it's just such a unique combination of people who work in tech and then people who are also soul searching. And sometimes you get a combination of both. So when I was talking about sprints, all these people started cracking up. They're like, yeah, I do sprints at work. Like, I had no idea this is something that was even in your arsenal. So that was really fun. And a lot of people resonated with that. So at the end of my talk, I had offered to have dinner with 3 people, for the first 3 people to DM me on Instagram. And so I was thinking like it's going to be a nice, small, intimate dinner. That's the thing with Mind Valley is like, it's nice to make these connections, but you want it in an intimate setting. And I ended up getting 50 requests.
Wow.
So we
50 out of 150. That's a pretty good ratio.
Good. And I was like, I don't even know like who came in first. So we expand the group to 8, and I couldn't have curated a better group because it was like really balanced ratio, balance of people from all over the world going through different stages of their relationships. And we were learning so much from each other. It was really fun. And one woman was already doing like a trial relationship with a new partner. So she was like, I'm totally doing this, but in a non-formal way. Yeah, it was a really good conversation.
Very cool. And what was it that you like? Because you were already going to the conference and then they had like a call out for speakers.
Yeah. So they have Mind Valley authors, they call them. And these are people who have courses on Mind Valley. And then for these events, they have a call for tribe speakers.
Okay.
This is what makes it even more of a cult. Like who calls their company a tribe. So the cult speakers. So you can apply to be a tribe speaker, and then they pick you based on programming. They like organize you by the day. The day I went on, there was a dating coach that spoke before me, and then the guy after me was all about entrepreneurship. So they just like kind of transition the subject based on who they have on stage speaking. Yeah, so that's how it happened. And it was such a wonderful opportunity to deepen my connection with Mind Valley members, because my first year I was very passive, just there to watch the talks and see what it was all about. But this year I feel like I had a much deeper understanding of the organization, but also the people who were there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And speaking of incredible speakers, I'll transition. We have a treat for everyone today. We have a treat. We have the wonderful Eli Finkel back. We had him last season with Paul Eastwick, who's been on this podcast a couple times as well, talking about the psychology of relationships and how, they actually have a podcast they do together called Factually Ever After. That's about what rom-coms get factually right and factually wrong about falling in love. So he's just a wealth of knowledge, and we love talking to the two of them. And we're like, Eli, let's get you back solo. And Eli's done some incredible work with compatibility and the myths around compatibility and how it's actually not as important in a lot of ways that we think compatibility is so essential to picking the right partner. And we're like, perfect, let's do this topic because we love diving into this. And it is honestly, it's such an incredible episode. Similar to Dr. Alexandra Solomon, I never knew that you could have a career in studying love. Yeah. And that's what Eli has had. It's very enviable, the path that he's taken. He's a social psychology professor who studies romantic relationships and American politics, and a professor at Northwestern University. He's the director of Northwestern's Relationships and Motivation Lab. Don't you want to be part of that lab so bad? I absolutely do. And he also is a best-selling author of The All or Nothing Marriage, How the Best Marriages Work. And we definitely need to get him back again to talk about that topic in more depth. But I've been reading the book as I enter the phase of marriage, and it is so interesting to hear his insights because he published so many scientific papers. He was actually quoted a lot in Modern Romance, the Aziz Ansari book, because he partnered with Eric Kleinenberg, who's also a social psychologist. So probably brought in all his friends to add some data and stats to that book, but just a very notable person. And I actually saw in his bio, The Economist declared him one of the leading lights in the realm of relationship psychology. Wow. It's huge. Eli, that's so great. We knew there was something special about him when we talked to him. He backs everything up with science and research and numbers, but he can also translate it for the everyday person who may not be as well versed in numbers. Yeah. And I think a lot of what he says too, I was able to understand why things in my current relationship work so well. Things in past relationships maybe didn't work as well. I think hearing the science and background puts a lot into perspective. You'll also hear that a lot of what we've come to believe about compatibility and love has been false, definitely not proven through science, and he'll debunk some of those myths. But that's why it's so important to hear this conversation, because we've been told lies for so long, and we have to rewire and unlearn all those things that we learned since we were children. Okay, well, you all are in for a treat. We love this episode. And before we get into it, of course, go pick up How to Be Dateable if you haven't yet. Our book, our baby, our baby. We were just saying that when we're in Sebastopol for my wedding, we're going to try to hit up the Sebastopol bookstore do a signing if we can, if they'll have us. Gotta always be, putting our baby first. But we love the book.
Spoken like a true parent.
We are, in some ways we are. Audiobook, hardcover, Kindle version, whatever
ebook,
your jam is. Yeah, you get it, howtobedateable.com, and go take the quiz if you haven't taken the quiz yet of what type of dater are you, what's your dating archetype. You can do that also on that website.
I've met people who took the quiz together with their partner or who took the quiz together with their friends, and they said it was actually really fun to make a party out of it. So there's a party idea for you. Get like 5 of your closest friends together and then compare your results.
That's the true measure of compatibility. How do you...
What's your dating archetype?
How do your archetypes work together? There's actually, people ask this a lot. Are there more compatible archetypes? And the answer is no, but it's knowing what are your strengths and then what are the things that might get in your way that you can work together. And that's the true definition of compatibility. Okay. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We put up some clips of episodes so you can... I don't know. It's just, it's another dimension of Dateable. So make sure you're following us if you aren't yet at Dateable Podcast. Okay. Well, before we get into it with Eli, let's hear a message from our sponsors.
As summer winds down, I'm all about refreshing my wardrobe with staple pieces for the season ahead. And Quince nails it with luxe essentials that feel effortless and look polished, perfect for layering and mixing. Their styles are so versatile, I find myself reaching for them time and time again. Think chic cashmere and cotton sweaters starting at just $40, washable silk tops, which I have many of, and classic denim pants. And the best part, everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands, and they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. My current most favorite piece from Quince right now is a button-down linen shirt. I have the matching pants to go with it. Such a great transitional piece, perfect for summer nights right now, and then well into the fall. Elevate your fall wardrobe essentials with Quince. Go to quince.com/dateable for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/dateable to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/DATEABLE.
You know what doesn't belong in your epic summer plans? Getting burned by your old wireless bill. With Mint Mobile, you can get the coverage and speed you're used to, but for way less money. And for a limited time, Mint Mobile is offering 3 months of unlimited premium wireless service for $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number over with all your existing contacts or get an entirely new number. This is what I would totally do if I was dating on the apps right now. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer in your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/dateable. That's mintmobile.com/dateable. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Okay, let's get into it with Eli Finkel.
Welcome back to A Dateable, Eli, to discuss one of the most debated topics we've ever had on Dateable, which is compatibility. How do you choose the right partner? How do you know you're with the right partner? And we keep going back and forth, but you've devoted a lot of research into this topic. So it's nice to have an expert versus just me and Julie giving our opinions.
I'm delighted to be back. It's always fun visiting with you two.
We love having people like you to scientifically back up a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. And I think like one piece that I found really interesting that you've quoted before is that like initial compatibility, like shared interests or having similar personalities isn't actually as strong of predictor of long-term relationship satisfaction as we may think. Why is this the case?
Yeah. And look, I was surprised by this. I mean, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, how important is it to be with somebody who has similar hobbies as you or similar personalities or compatible personalities, and even things like values, these effects are much smaller than I would have anticipated. So how could it be that people have such strong instincts that similarity is crucial, and yet the evidence is so weak? And I think the most foundational reason for that is that perceived similarity is a huge effect. Like if you're trying to predict how much I like a girl I went on a date with, and you ask me, like, how much did the two of you have in common? That will be a huge predictor of how much I'm into her. But that is not an objective measure of compatibility. And what we've learned, I mean, really over the last 20 years, we've incrementally put the pieces together on this, is when we meet somebody, we go through some sort of conversational process. We, explore this terrain of the conversational space and that terrain of the conversational space. We touch on these various topics. And especially insofar as there's some sort of spark, we lean really heavily into that tiny fraction of the conversational space where we're laughing together, we're having a good time. And so afterward, we have some feeling about whether we're compatible with someone, but we base it on a very specific subset of the possible space. So it feels like we have a lot of similarity, but we could have focused on the other 98% of the space, and maybe we weren't similar there at all. We just focused on a very small subset and drew conclusions.
And can we take that a step further? Is it because when people have this perceived similarities with someone, they become lazier in getting to know them? And kind of where I'm going with this is that I read that when you speak a second language, you actually exercise more of your empathy muscles when you speak in that language because you're more careful about the words that you choose. But when you speak your native language, you default to what you normally speak in. So there's less empathy. And I do wonder if you just assume someone's so similar to you, you exercise less of those muscles of getting to know them as a newer person, and you can default some of these perceptions.
Boy, that is an interesting idea. I don't know that we can speak to it based on the evidence, but let me comment on a related idea. This idea of like how much effort are you putting into not only making the connection, but really like making an impression of someone. And the truth is that when we have a confident assessment of the person, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, we kind of turn off our assessment instruments. And this is actually a pretty important thing that we do when we're developing trust in a significant other or in a friend or in a coworker or whatever. One of the ways that you can think about trust is as a matter of faith, as a matter of I'm no longer monitoring, I'm no longer keeping track, I'm no longer paying attention to what you're out doing. I just know as a matter of faith that you're out there doing good stuff for me. And that is a version of this idea of like turning off the effort that is probably beneficial most of the time. You're no longer having to do this careful calculus because you know the person's out there doing good stuff. Now, one other thing I should mention in this space is when we're first meeting people, we draw impressions really fast. Those impressions matter regardless of whether they're accurate. That is, if in those opening moments, I traversed down this part of the conversational terrain and you were like, oh yeah, I saw that movie. That was so funny. And I say, I know, don't you love the scene where we something, then what we'll do is we'll interpret the rest of the interaction from this really positive, rosy glow perspective and incorporate all the new information into this positive or perhaps into this not so positive earlier impression.
They're like, I don't ever want to have a relationship. You're like, that sounds amazing. Thank you.
but we both love this movie. We must be meant to be.
I mean, your listeners have been there. They've been on a date, and within the first 3 minutes, they're like, okay, like how long until I can say, oh boy, would you look at the time? And at that point, they're mostly not forming new impressions. They're not engaging in any sort of careful assessment anymore. They know that this one isn't going to work, or they're very excited that it is going to work. And then they interpret the rest of the interaction in accord with those early impressions.
So I remember I had a friend that was like really excited about this guy that she met. And she's like, he went to the same type of boarding school as me. He grew up on the East Coast. I don't know what other surface level type similarity they had. It was like this whole list of things. And I'm like, you've only known this guy for like 10 minutes, right? You met out at like a bar. Like, how do you know this person? Why do you think like our mind jumps there? Is it just like easier to like find those things because they're more tangible? Like whether like instead of like, are they a good person or are they reliable? Like what's kind of the reason we go there?
So there is this sort of good on paper idea of like what we think will make a good fit for us. And in fact, if you ask people, they have no difficulty telling you what are the attributes they're looking for in a partner. And it could be we went to the same sort of boarding school. It could be I want somebody who's extroverted or somebody who's kind or somebody who's sexy, right? Like we've done a bunch of research in this space, actually mostly spearheaded by Paul Eastwick, your good friend, Paul. And, you know, the assumption is that I know what I'm talking about. You ask me, like, what sorts of things appeal to you in a woman? And I'll tell you confidently, like, these are the sorts of things that really matter. But what you can do, these are actually empirical questions you can actually test. All right, so now you introduce me to a whole bunch of women. So for example, we've run speed dating events, right? And people in our studies report, like, what are the qualities that matter to you in a partner? Then we introduce you to 12 people of your preferred sex. And we know the extent to which those people actually match versus mismatch the characteristics that you said were particularly important. So how much does it matter that the man I introduced you to happens to align versus misalign with the characteristics that you said were really important to you? It matters very little. Like it's more than zero. Having somebody match your preferences is better than like literally nothing, but it is a very small amount of what's going to make you feel a sense of connection together and what's going to make your relationship successful.
And maybe that's the follow-up. Like clearly, like you can't have zero, right? Like you can't have no chemistry at all or no attraction or nothing in common, but we don't need a lot. Like what's kind of that line of like the tipping point of what matters?
Oh, so those are, when you sort of summarize that, I see two different things in what you were saying.
Okay.
So you said in the front end, like no attraction. And then you said something like, you know, compatibility on paper. Attraction matters tremendously, right? Like you could imagine that we lived in some other culture or in the, you know, Middle Ages when marriage was like about political alliances and like who grew the best maize or corn or something like that. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where to a very significant extent, we're going to require that we feel a sense of love for the person and usually at least some level of a sense of passion. So it's absolutely crucial given the way we think about the way, for example, serious relationships or marriage should work, given our current cultural context. It's crucial that we have attraction. The question is, what predicts that attraction? Could you know in advance, like if you were the smartest social scientist ever with the best measures ever, to what extent could you take like self-reports or like body odor or whatever it is and use all that information collectively to say, you, Julie, are going to be really into Dave and not really that into John? And the answer is mostly not. Not that you won't have attraction to one or the other, but the extent to which is predictable based on information that you could know in advance is very, very small. To be clear, especially on a first meeting, there is some amount of consensus about like who's hot, right? Like, I mean, your audience knows this, right? They know that like some people are hotter than other people. Now, that doesn't mean there's like total consensus. Some people are like, no, I think he's really good looking. And your friend says, no, I don't think he's that good looking. That's obviously real too. But on a first meeting, there's some amount of consensus about who's physically attractive. But remember, that's not really the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's certainly not the problem that, you know, online dating services are trying to solve is like finding the hot guy, right? What they're trying to say is like, who's compatible with you, Julie, more than with you, Yue? And that's the thing that's really hard to predict in advance, the compatibility, some aspect of the two of us together, independent of who you are and who I am. And I think in principle, it is mostly unknowable because most of attraction, beyond the fact that some people are hot and you like interacting with them in the first few minutes, most of attraction is due to something that emerges as we start chatting and interacting with each other.
So if I'm hearing this right, attraction feeds into compatibility, but it doesn't determine compatibility.
It does not determine it, but I think, the way I think about attraction is it is an early indicator of compatibility. Or another way to say it is compatibility when you're first interacting with somebody is attraction. That's basically what it is. Like I feel into you and that is special, right? I'm more into you at the speed dating event than I am into the other women and you're more into me at the speed dating event than you are with the other men. I'm happy, for lack of a better word, to call that compatibility, that there's some like unique connection that two of us have at the speed dating event. Separate from that is what has caused that compatibility and was it knowable as a function of like my biography and personality and values and your background as well? Is it knowable in advance?
Oh my God, I have this. Oh, I have so many questions. I have one. Okay, I'll go with this question. If that's the case, do you think attraction is only determined by comparison? Like, could I be attracted to someone in silo and there are no other viable partners for me? Or it is really in comparison to the other people I have as potential?
Boy, this is another thought-provoking question. Maybe an odd way to start answering this one is, I think we could be attracted to most people. And here I think you have to do like the desert island experiment, right?
Yeah.
So like if she were or he were the only person there.
Well, like the Bachelor.
The Bachelor,
right?
Yeah. Now those people are pre-selected to be physically good looking and so forth.
Right.
But if you sort of took a random draw from the population, and let's imagine these were, a heterosexual man and a heterosexual woman, but just like a random draw from the population, they speak the same language, let's imagine, how plausible is it that they could, fall for each other? And here I mean, feel some level of sexual desire for each other, some level of romantic connection for each other? Highly likely. Like I bet most of us could find a way to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of into her. So in that sense, I suppose you could say it's comparative in that sense. Like if it's the only person around, you sort of make do. And remember, this like desert island example is crazy in one sense, but you don't have to go that far into the past before you get to the time when most people married somebody like on their block, right? So, go back 100 or 200 years, and it was just standard to marry one of the, 5 or 10 people who happened to be nearby. That was just a totally standard way this stuff happened. Now, what about this inherent comparison stuff in the age of the apps, in the age of urban living and romantic ideologies? I don't know what to say. Yes, I do think that we're in some calculating process of trying to figure out like who's appealing for us. I'm more into this guy than I am into that guy. I think those things happen. One thing that makes me really happy, that human psychology fixes this problem for most of us most of the time, because when we're in love with a partner, when we're highly committed to a partner, we're not looking. Right? I don't want to be Pollyannish. I'm aware that affairs happen. I'm aware that people who are happy can be seduced. I'm aware of all of those things. But if somebody is in a happy relationship, the fact that she could open Tinder and there's like thousands of guys there is irrelevant. Not because those guys don't exist, but because when she's happy, she's not looking.
So maybe this is a good time to define compatibility, because I think what I'm hearing is like short-term compatibility is one thing. Like we have chemistry, we connect on the superficial likeness, and then there's long-term compatibility of what sets us up for a relationship that could last for years and years, and marriage or even life partner, whatever it may be. And is the word even compatibility for that? Like how do you define those two?
Yes, you are exactly right. I think of compatibility as what makes two people more into each other. So early on, that could be like craving a kiss. And later on, it could be like happily married or whatever. Above and beyond how happy I am with a given partner, above and beyond how happy I would be with like some other partner, and above and beyond how happy she would be with some other partner. So I think of compatibility as some unique specialness that makes us connect with each other above and beyond just like the way we would connect with some, random draw from the population or the second best option or something like that. I think the way lots of people talk about compatibility, and this might be the standard definition, and it might be what you guys are using, is what we sometimes talk about in terms of like gears or puzzle pieces that like fit or don't fit. So you are a gear of a certain size, and like the teeth on the edges of the gears are like a certain width
and they're
apart.
Sharp.
And they are sharp and they are fierce, and you do not want to get cut. So you are looking for somebody who is also like the right size gear. And so that when you like start rotating, he sort of rotates right into those grooves and doesn't get cut by your sharp gears. And that's one way of thinking about compatibility. In the work that Paul Eastwick and I have done in this space, and other people too, we've become skeptical that that's what compatibility is, or at least that that's how it works if you're trying to predict relationship happiness. That most of what actually makes relationships good, and in the definition that I'm using, compatible, is not finding the person whose like puzzle piece fits your puzzle piece or whose gear aligns with your gear. That's a way of thinking about compatibility. And it could have been that that's really what predicts happiness. I was totally open to that. 20 years ago, I would have just assumed that the answer was yes. But what we are finding is that the vastly larger influence, on how happy people are in their relationship, I might call that also compatibility, is what they have cultivated together. That is the extent to which we have really chosen to like lean into those parts of the possible compatibilities that make us happiest, and the parts where we have the best strengths and where we fight the least. And we've down-regulated or downgraded the centrality of things that we might have thought were important to us, but that we always fight about. We've just decided like, okay, we're not good at that. And we're going to stop fighting about those things. And we're going to lean in on these other things, like calling each other like cute pet names and having in-jokes and like looking across the party at each other and knowing like, oh, you want to leave, or, oh, you just picked up a good piece of gossip. Those aren't things that are knowable. Those aren't things that you just look at the gears on the shelf and like pick 2 gears that fit. No, it's a process of getting acquainted and leaning into our strengths and leaning away from our limitations and working to become compatible over time. That's the way I think about compatibility.
So it sounds like there are really 2 phases of compatibility. You can have immediate compatibility with someone, just given your gears fit, but that's not something you work towards. It's just luck. And then there is efforted compatibility that is created and developed over time. And that's a compatibility we should put more weight on.
Yes, but even that early stuff is not as much about gears. It's just like we've looked. So, for example, the similarity stuff. So when I say to you or say on the air here that similarity is just not that big, and people are like, well, what the hell are you talking about? Like, of course it is. Let me just be clear about what we mean. We're often talking about the initial compatibility stuff, the initial attraction stuff. We're actually talking about like at a speed dating event or after a first date, that you get set up on a blind date. How into people are you as a function of how similar are your big 5 personality attributes? What are your hobbies? Things that feel like they'd have to be, of course, these things would have to predict how well we got along. But even that initial spark, again, it's not nothing. Like a little bit more similarity is a little bit associated with better compatibility, defined as like I was really into her when we first met and she was really into me when we first met. But those effects even then are pretty small because already I tried the conversational gambit that's like, hey, like, look at this. We're at a speed dating event. That's kind of goofy, right? And you're like, I know, like I always thought speed dating was like the bottom of the barrel, but here I am. And like, I laugh at that. And then I say, have you ever seen The 40-Year-Old Virgin? And you're like, I know, I was talking about that last night. But I might have said, have you seen The 40-Year-Old Virgin? And you're like, nope, didn't see it. And then you end up in this like mucky puddle of reboots where you're just trying to find something. And it's like the conversational space is big enough that you could have hit on any number of things. You two know that Paul Eastwick and I have this movie podcast called Love Factually, which again, I hope some of your listeners will check it out. Good. Thank you. But 500 Days of Summer, I think really drives home some of the absurdity of these ideas that feel so intuitive to us. He's convinced that he's in love with Summer, right? This is Tom. He's totally in love with Summer. And his, consigliere, basically the person he trusts the most is his, I think, 12-year-old sister, who's like, look, just because some girl likes the same crazy stuff you like doesn't mean you're compatible. But that part of it, I think, is already in the movie. But to ruin the end of the movie, turn the volume down for a second if you don't want a spoiler here. At the end, Summer breaks up with him. He eventually meets Autumn. What do they talk about? Like, what is it that they talk about that makes them feel like, oh my God, like the gods have sent us to each other. How could we be this compatible? It's because they both have the same feeling about a parking lot at a club.
Right.
They're like, oh, that parking lot, it's terrible. And what do they conclude from that? Can you believe how much we have in common? You think any researcher could have assessed that in advance? Like, well, how do you feel about the parking lot at 3800 Davis Street? These things are the vast, vast array of things we could talk about. We get lucky and we hit on some of them. And then when we do, we laugh and we bring out the best in each other and things go smoothly. But there's a lot of randomness in those opening moments.
So in that example, though, is that because they've come up with like this shared language and culture that you were talking about does help predict, or is it really just happenstance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but they chose it.
Yeah.
There was nothing special about that.
Right.
That parking lot. That parking lot is in fact not special at all, but to them, it is hugely special. And that's what I mean when I say compatibility is something you build.
Yeah.
You decide. Also in that movie, there's another great example when he's still with Summer, they go to the IKEA.
Yeah.
Remember this? They're like walking around the IKEA. I think they actually like get on the bed.
Yeah, I love that scene. Yeah,
I think they like sort of act like it's their house or something. And it's adorable. And it's great for their relationship. And the devastating moment, or one of the devastating moments in that movie, is they're back at IKEA and he's doing his half of their shtick, their little microculture, and she's not.
Yeah.
And that's a devastating moment for him and a devastating moment for the relationship, because not because they're both IKEA lovers, not because you could have looked at a bunch of gears in advance and like chosen like Tom IKEA lover and Summer IKEA lover, but because the two of them had these experiences together and chose to sort of lean in to these special, unique, idiosyncratic things that they themselves do that are like the definition of us, the definition of like who we are as a couple. And that to me is the compatibility that you develop even in those opening moments, and you continue to earn over time to the degree that you continue to prioritize it.
You always got to make fun of me, but I feel like this was something that was definitely different in my current relationship. Was even from the early stages, like we had like these like, I don't know, stickers that we sent to each other. Like they were so
digital
cheesy.
Stickers.
Digital.
Yes.
Yeah. Like through text.
I assume she wasn't sending
I
them
wasn't
through
like
UPS.
throwing them in the mail. And
that would be awesome, though.
I would get
that would be a microculture.
I would want stickers in the mail. Yes.
Seriously.
But they seem so like trivial at the time. But like looking back, I was like, actually, they did really like make this bond, that like this kind of inside thing. And I think that was actually like very apparent from the early stages, which was different than other relationships.
You know, it's interesting. Not only like as you look back, is it like, I don't know why it was, such a big deal. Sometimes these things are like incomprehensible from the outside.
Yeah.
I remember with my wife, maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, we had my stepsister and stepbrother-in-law over, and we adore them. They were over at our house, and Allison, my wife, did something, and I said something, "Oh, you fucked up." And he was like, his jaw dropped a little bit. He was like, "Oh my God, like, why would you sort of be so disrespectful?" And she had to say, like, no, that's not what this is. He doesn't mean it at all like that. This is how we talk to each other. It could not possibly be more affectionate than like, you fucked up. But it is inexplicable from the outside. But if I stopped saying it, or my wife stopped saying it to me, it would be a bad sign for the relationship.
Yeah, we have like catchphrases too. That's so funny. I mean, I guess this is like the part that I know you've done a ton of research on, like online dating and dating apps, and how like this stuff doesn't really come through there. And that's why we're like focused on the similarities and the surface level interests and like the stuff that maybe isn't this. But like, how do you actually vet for this in the world that we're in today? Or is there no way?
Let me say, I mean, I don't think you can vet for this, but before I throw the entire industry under the bus, because I am about to do that.
Brace yourselves.
let me send them like a short love letter, like a short bunch of stickers through the mail.
Method.
Yeah,
something positive first.
Exactly.
Stickers.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm doing. They are. The existence of the industry is tremendous. It is like the people who are complaining about it have a bunch of justifiable complaints, but they probably don't have much feel for what it was like to be single and sad about being single in like 1985, but it's long past the time when your friends are setting you up with people. And it was like most of us, most of the time, can use the apps or whatever else to go on a date. And that is worth so much. When your immediate social environment isn't delivering you a bevy of options, there's other options. And I just can't praise it enough for that.
100%.
That said,
here comes the middle of the sandwich.
One of the big problems that the industry has had from the start is, at least early on, like with early Match or whatever else, it was like thousands. It was like, how many people are within 25 miles of zip code, whatever. And like the human brain doesn't do that. It's not like we're good at looking at 3,000 profiles and picking out who's like compatible with us. Again, you can look at photos and say that person's hotter, assuming that it's like a fair photo of themselves. That you can do, but like, who's going to be more compatible with me than with the next person? You cannot do it. And once you're above like 5 or 10, they all start to like run together anyway. The second thing the industry did, so I think this idea that you can like show people enough profiles and they can find someone compatible with you, that's false. The second thing that they tried to do, understanding that that's false, and this was mostly eHarmony was the first to do this, is they said, we've got an algorithm. Like you don't have to do it because we've done it it for you. We're going to find the 5 people out of our thousands that are uniquely compatible with you. And look, I was excited about that. They were making those claims in 2000.
Yeah, seems like a good promise, right?
It seems like a good promise. And as somebody who studies this and thinks like, I don't know, it'd be sort of awesome to make millions on something. I was like, yeah, we should be able to do this stuff. The problem is we can't. The problem is for the reasons that we've been talking about earlier. When they claim they can set you up with your soulmate, they're lying. If they're claiming like we can, eliminate the drug abusers, and then they can do that. But that's very different from we're going to find your soulmate. So why are online dating sites, online dating services more generally so useful? Because they provide opportunities to get across a cup of coffee or a pint of beer from somebody to find out, is there anything here that would warrant me, doing a second opportunity, a second date together. And I think you can tell at least reasonably quickly whether there's any spark at all, which I think should be the threshold, not like tons of spark, but like any spark at all, I think is a good threshold for like, yeah, that's worth a second try. How do you do that? Well, look, I don't love how much emphasis the industry places on photographs. I mean, it's true that like what I like about the industry are places where it's egalitarian. So it's really, really great for gay people. It's been better for gay people than for straight people, and especially for gay people in communities where it's not that easy to be gay. That's something I love about the industry. One thing I don't love nearly as much is the people who are hot, or at least the people who have hot photos on their profile, which may not be exactly the same thing.
Nope.
They are
cleaning up.
Exactly. They get much more attention. And so I don't love how much emphasis it places on looks. The best thing to do is just figure out a way to get face to face with somebody for at least a brief check-in, and then see like if there's absolutely nothing there, then okay. But if you're like, I don't know, there's some non-zero shot, then try a second date and see how that plays out.
I mean, Yue and I are probably among the few in this space that don't tell you to like spend a lot of time on a profile. We're actually like, spend 30 seconds, get a gut feel, and then filter through the conversation, because you can tell nothing from the photo, like outside
Basically
of it.
nothing.
But we hear a lot of people spending astronomical amount of time micro-analyzing every last thing in a profile and spending hours and hours on their own profile. And our motto is like, if it's a maybe, it's a yes. Invite them to your house party and see if you guys jive. And house party, like figuratively. But yes, that's kind of like we're on the same boat. So it's good to know your take on that aligns.
And maybe I just want to think about something actionable for our listeners, because the challenge we always hear with dating apps is even taking the conversation off the apps. People feel like, oh, this conversation is going nowhere. We've had people who come to us and ask for a list of questions to ask through messaging because they don't know how to facilitate that conversation, or just not feeling excited after a conversation.
Yeah.
But I think what you two were saying with kind of the shared language and inside jokes, maybe that's an opportunity for connection and building compatibility, even in the earlier messaging stage.
Yeah.
And what you said was interesting, Eli. It takes someone just leaning in to that opportunity. And I call it kind of like a bid for connection. If someone's making that bid, the other person can lean in. Maybe for our listeners, take those opportunities to lean in. One great example is my friend was messaging with someone on a dating app, and he spelled fuck like duck, like many of us, autocorrect do. So she sent back this duck emoji.
Yeah, that's great.
And then he sent a bunch of ducks. And then after they started dating, they actually dated for a while. Every time they had a bad day or was feeling frustrated, they sent a duck. And that became their mutual language. But that really started in the messaging stages.
Yeah.
So maybe for all of our listeners, here's something to do today is find those bits for connection and lean into it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I want to dive into this even more, but before we do, let's take a quick break to hear from our partners.
This thing of like, how do we make dates better? I think there's like two answers here. One is nobody set a rule that you had to do the resume exchange. Now I just described the resume exchange. I just described going, for a cup of coffee or whatever, but there's no rule on that. Like you could do something that you would enjoy doing, even if it were by yourself or even if it were with somebody that were kind of a dud, right? So there's no rule that says you have to have the resume exchange dates. The other thing is like not that many ideas from like the academic literature on relationships go viral, but the 36 questions have gone viral. And at this point, there's like no excuse to have a really boring first conversation. Like look up the 36 questions if you want. It's funny. Paul was in. I might have told you guys the story. So my first year as a professor at Northwestern, I'm finishing my 22nd year now, but my first year here as a professor was Paul Eastwick's first year as a graduate student, and I was teaching a PhD course on close relationships, and he was saying, well, how do people get into these relationships? Like, okay, great. Like once you're in a relationship, like here's how forgiveness works and here's what commitment is and all those things that we were talking about. But like, how does initial attraction work? How does early relationship development work? And that kept coming up. And so the students, unbeknownst to me, figured out that there was a speed dating event that was going to be coming to Chicago the next week. And like this was pre-iPhone. Like I didn't have anything with me to know about this. So by the time I got home, it was like 2 a.m. I'd gone out that night. By the time I got home, they had found a date that we were all going to go speed dating. And I actually brought a note card that had like high intimacy questions on one side of the note card and low intimacy questions on the other side of the note card. And you could imagine doing something similar on your dates, although only use the high intimacy questions on the note card.
Interesting. This is all like clicking for me too, because we've talked about like the date review, which is what you meant by like the resume, like exchange.
Yeah. Yep.
I've used this example before, but like one of the best dates I had with a past partner was like when we just talked about pranks we pulled on each other for like the first hour. And it wasn't the resume exchange date review. And it makes sense now, like why that worked. And I think like I wasn't able to like put that together before. I think we're just like, get rid of the date review. But now you're hearing straight from Eli that this is the science telling you to like actually focus on those shared moments and that building that microculture more.
And those questions, I mean, those are questions that are pretty intimate. So some of them might be like more intimate than those 36 questions. Some of them might be more intimate than you want to be, but there's plenty in there that should be well within the comfort zone for people on a first date in a given cultural context. There's not that much reason to spend that much time being like, so where'd you go to college? And then like, what did you do next? Like maybe you'll get lucky and be like, oh my God, my best friend went to that same college. Did you pledge a fraternity? Oh my God, like my friend was in that. Like, great. That's great. You got lucky in the, you don't have to do the mucky puddle of reboots, in the conversation world. But there's a bunch of things that people actually say something new and interesting. And it just puts an upper limit on how, you know what it does? It puts a lower limit on like a boredom thing. It's just, you're having real conversation with a real person about real topics as opposed to fake conversations with a real person about fake topics.
Do you remember one or two of the questions from the list? I'm
it's funny.
them.
I think I remember like the highest intimacy questions.
Oh,
so
no.
these things go incremental. I think they start with things like, what is one of your favorite hobbies, which is frankly good enough. It's way better than being like, so how long have you lived in Chicago or whatever?
Right.
And it ends with, I think it's like, which celebrity do you admire the most? I think it ends with things like, of all the people whose death would upset you the most. And by the way, just so you know, by the way, I'm not recommending that one necessarily for a first date. You don't have to go to the group 3. There's 3 groups it goes in increasing intimacy. But I will tell you that this is a research paradigm in my world. It's almost 3 decades old at this point. And over the course of 45 minutes, they run people through these sequence, these 3 sets of questions, and people feel massively closer. Like massively, massively closer. Now, that's a really cool research tool for us, because if you want to run experimental studies where some people are randomly assigned to the high closeness condition and some people are randomly assigned to the low closeness condition, we have tools for doing that. But if the only thing you want to do is have dates that are less boring, I blame you. If you're going out and having boring dates, do like 5 minutes of sleuthing online to find out what the 36 questions are, and you come equipped with a few interesting questions.
I mean, the key too is not having this like predefined answer we're looking for, because I think that also happens in the date review. Like I'm just thinking of like, what's your hobby? What we were saying earlier, you don't need the hobby to be aligned with your hobby.
Not
you
at
just
all.
need to understand and like hear the person out and appreciate what they're bringing to the table and use it as a conversation starter.
Again, I think about movies a lot, and I think about relationships in movies a lot. And one of the movies we've covered on Love Factually, and one of my favorites is La La Land. And with regard to what you're saying, the Ryan Gosling character is obsessed with jazz. And the Emma Stone character, they meet and they're like walking around and there's nothing yet, but like kind of intrigued maybe. And she says, I need to get this out of the way right away. I hate jazz. Or like, I dislike jazz. She says like Kenny G. Now we know earlier, because Ryan Gosling's character was talking with his sister. His sister was trying to set him up with a girl. And he said, does she like jazz? And the sister was like, probably not. And he said, well, what would we have to talk about?
Yeah.
And your point, and for anybody who's seen the movie, Ryan Gosling's character and Emma Stone's character never stop talking. They have endless stuff to talk about, because it turns out that it doesn't matter to her whether the guy's interested in jazz. She thinks she's not into that, but then he's into jazz and he's exciting about jazz. And the way he talks about jazz is kind of thrilling. And he takes her to a jazz show and he gets to see what she likes about it. You don't need somebody prepackaged with your interests. You need somebody with interests, and you need to like be excited about what they're excited about. And that's not that hard to do as long as people actually are excited about something.
Oh my God. That's a red flag if someone doesn't have interests.
It would be a hard one for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be like, look, I don't care. Are you interested in astronomy? Are you interested in bugs? Like, I would be indifferent. It has to be something.
Stickers, whatever.
Stickers. Yeah.
So I did have one person once that I like talked to on like a video call that basically like said that he didn't think it was worth meeting up because I wasn't into sci-fi enough.
Yeah.
Like what? I mean, I think it's like kind of short-sighted, but at the end of the day, like if that's like all you do, like is that important that you find someone? Like what's the line? No. You're like, no.
No, I mean, look, he's welcome to limit his dating pool however he wants. And if he feels like he's in a climate of abundance and he can just toss out reasonable people because, you know, they don't know their, you know, Ray Bradbury's, that's totally fine. I'm not judging him. Do I think that the extent to which he will feel like initial attraction to somebody is particularly affected by whether she also likes sci-fi? No, that effect is almost certainly going to be small. We know this. Again, I'm not saying this is intuitive. I did not have this intuition. I'm basing this on 20 years of evidence. And do I think that he's going to need sci-fi to be happy with like a long-term partner? Also, no. Right? This idea that it has to be your romantic partner that you share your primary hobby with. No, nobody ever decided that. And I would ask him, if he wanted advice from me, I would ask him, why do you think it's so important that your romantic partner, your primary romantic partner, whatever he's seeking, also be a sci-fi person? Like, couldn't it be totally reasonable that she's interested in other stuff and you guys end up going to plays? And yet there's still plenty of time in your life where you do sci-fi conventions and you have sci-fi reading groups. And it turns out that this person that you're with now is like a really good caregiver and a really good parent and really good in bed, but like doesn't like Ray Bradbury. Seriously? You're going to rule that person out? It strikes me as short-sighted.
So I guess where is the line though for lifestyle? Because we hear people say like, I want someone with a compatible lifestyle, and maybe
do they mean money?
So I guess maybe there's a couple factors here. There's like socioeconomic background, maybe how you spend your time. Like I'm thinking lifestyle, like we have a friend that's obsessed with music festivals and she could not fathom being with someone that didn't go to music festivals because that's how she spends every weekend.
Does she have kids?
No.
I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Like if she thinks she's going to take her 8-month-old to music festivals, I think she's probably wrong. If she thinks that her priorities right now are going to be the same as her priorities when she isn't getting enough sleep, and it's probably going to be pretty important to her that she's with somebody who's like a conscientious parent and a supportive partner, somebody who's really good for her career. Like if I had to guess for her, I don't know her, but if I had to guess.
This is the problem though, is everyone's looking at the moment right now. Now,
yeah.
So when we go on dates, we're judging people through a date lens of like, was that fun? Did I enjoy having cocktails and tell you about travel stories? We're not thinking about like, are they going to comfort me when my parent passes? Or like, are they going to be a good parent? Like, how do you start to like shift into that larger picture then?
I don't know that it's that easy to do. I mean, I share your diagnosis of the problem. Let me sort of summarize it in my own words. I think, you know, it's like we sort of sample from life experience, right? Like our life will have a certain array of experiences, and like we're 27 and like we meet somebody and, you know, there's a spark there and then the sex is good. And then we travel to Europe and it's like, oh my God, like we just held hands and made out, you know, on the Seine. And how representative are those experiences of what it will be like to be married to somebody from say 30 to 85? Low? probably not very representative. And for me, I don't think it's an easy fix because first of all, I don't know how easy it is to simulate what's it going to be like when we have a kid and they have a learning disability. Like you're probably going to have some of those things in your future. And I don't think they're easy to simulate. Maybe, there's some trial things you can try like a puppy or like traveling, but not in, fancy hotels, like really going through some stressful things together. You can get a sense of how people cope with very stressful circumstances. But I'm married and I study marriage and I like marriage. I'm not saying everybody has to do it or anything like that. But if you ask me about the marriage decision, I mostly would call it a leap of faith. Yeah. I don't think you can really know. And for me, that's both scary and beautiful. Yeah. You just decide. I love you. I want to make a life with you. Do I have all the information I need to make an informed choice? I do not. Is one of us going to get a cancer diagnosis? Are we going to have a kid with a learning disability? Is somebody going to have like a totally gorgeous coworker who hits on her? Right? We can't know these things. And so we take a flying leap and we decide we're going to make this work. And that's why when we were talking earlier about the nature of compatibility, for me, it's a whole lot of what we're building. It's a whole lot of, are we creating a unique entity, not you plus me, but us? Something that doesn't exist in you and doesn't exist in me. It only exists as the two of us. And then do we cultivate it? Do we water it? Do we nurture it? Do we feed it? Do we lean in to try to keep building it over time? That is the way to have a successful marriage. And at least in the way I use the term, that is what compatibility is.
So to play devil's advocate, because I actually don't believe what I'm about to say, I don't believe in, but okay. I do want to offer this perspective.
It's not my opinion.
It's not my opinion.
Some people think.
If we're saying like marriage is a leap of faith and you can't predict the future, you got to build this marriage together. Why not then just find someone who's obsessed with the same things as you are, just to make it easier? Why not just start with that?
No, I agree. I agree. And if you remember, the language I use to talk about this is it's a good thing, just not by much. And so I totally agree with you that all else equal, that guy should find a sci-fi partner. I totally agree. That might make him, an eighth of a percent point happier in his marriage. I totally agree with you. So there's no harm in finding somebody who has hobbies that align with you. The dangerous mentality comes when we are ruling people out based on paper. We just limited the pool for ourselves in ways that we think are wise. We think we're saving ourselves time and energy. I doubt it.
So it's like you can find someone that likes to go to music festivals with you, but you have to have more than just that. It has to have that microculture and you have to be building together. It can't just be like solely we go to music festivals and that's like the basis of our connection.
Yeah. The large majority of people who go to music festivals are probably not a good partner for you. And yet there's some people who go to music festivals who are, and there's a whole lot of people who don't go to music festivals who also are.
So in your book, The All or Nothing Marriage, you reverse engineer kind of like the best marriages. And clearly we talked about today, like a big piece of it is building and that culture. Is there other pieces that you feel like are actually the stuff that we really should be looking for, opposed to the stuff we've been talking about that maybe isn't as important, that really does predict that great relationship?
Yeah. The All or Nothing Marriage, it was a book that I wrote when I had this realization that the average marriage has been getting worse over time, over the last few generations, let's say, but the best marriages have been getting better. And what is it that we are doing? What is it that the subset of us who are having some successes are doing that the rest of us can learn from? Yes. So one of the things beyond this microculture thing that I think is valuable is a metaphor that I find very useful for thinking about relationships that are going well is this Michelangelo metaphor that I think both of you are familiar with, that Michelangelo, when he was asked about sculpting, like what is the sculpting process? He didn't say, well, I'm creating this art. He said he was revealing it, right? The statue, the sculpture is inside. Michelangelo's David is inside some block of marble. And all he has to do is like buff and chisel and polish. And then you have David and that's it. Now, look, in some sense, that's true. It's also profoundly modest of probably the greatest sculptor ever to say about his art. But you could think about this also from the perspective of humans, right? So as a metaphor, of course, is not literal, but the idea is that all of us have our like actual self, the like unpolished marble, the unchiseled, unbuffed marble. But we have within us the version that we aspire to be, the more patient version, the funnier version, the kinder version, the more successful version. Some people will bring us closer to that person. And some people will push us further from that.
Yes.
So insofar as we have a sense of the version of us that we love the most, we can assess, like, am I the best version of me around this guy, this girl, right? And I actually I did end a relationship once in my 20s when I realized that the girl I was dating really liked about me the part of me that's like sort of playful, right? The part that's like goofing around and I guess, for lack of a better word, being very playful. I like that part of me too. She liked something nice about me that I also like, but I cared. I was just like trying to be an academic, and I I'd gotten my PhD, and I was on the way to being a serious scholar, and I wanted to be liked for that. And she liked me for something nice, something I liked about me. She clearly was trying to praise me, but she liked something about me that wasn't what I really cared about myself. Now, was this a sufficient reason to break up? Probably not. There were other issues as well, but I do think it's something to keep track of is, do I like me more around this person? Am I growing toward the person I want to be, or is it not really happening that way? That's probably one of the good metrics we can use to evaluate how well the relationship is going.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I remember dating this guy years and years ago, and we went on this trip together, and I was just so happy on this trip because we were like in this cabin, we're just like by a lake, and I started skipping, and he said something like, "Stop being a kid." And this guy was 6 years younger than me. And I remember just thinking, like, that's what I want to be. I want to be a kid in this sort of environment. But he was like, "No, you're the older one. Stop being a kid." God. Yeah.
He thought he was kidding, probably, right?
At first I thought so. And then if you saw him in the moment, you would change your mind.
Yeah. I mean, that sends a second red flag for me too. First of all, it's like you were loving your little euphoria, and for him to stomp on it is no fun. But there's a second one too, which is, it sounds like a controlling thing to say.
Oh, he was very controlling.
Yeah. Yes. That would be a red flag for me.
Yeah. So, okay, clearly as you keep going in the relationship, you can see this. But early stages, I mean, obviously you can see how what side they bring out of you on even a first date, but how do you start to scope this stuff early on?
Well, I think it probably manifests early on in feeling funny, is my guess. Feeling heard, feeling intelligent, feeling funny. Like, these are things that we feel to some greater or lesser extent on various first interactions, various first dates. And so those are things that, we also, not only do we want to like the other person, we would like to like us with the other person. And I think we can get an early sense of that. Again, I don't want to overstate how much assessment we should be doing in those opening moments, because I'm pretty enthusiastic about people giving a second date as a general default, only avoiding it when things were just really not at all there.
So yeah, I think this conversation has been so incredible. There's so many takeaways. I mean, I think one piece is that we do need to give things more time, because time does reveal, we talk about this in our book, actually, with this expectation of love on demand, that it's going to happen immediately. And what I'm hearing from you, Eli, is that the stuff that happens immediately isn't always the right predictors. So we do need the time to actually see what can be built. And I love this concept of give that second date or a third date or fourth date, chase that curiosity until you're like, no, this is a no. I think this piece around the building the microculture, this is what we need to do more of. And that's what's lacking today, because dating has become so transactional to ask the right questions, to find the right partner, and to sniff out all the red flags ahead of time and find all the deal breakers. And we're not saying put yourself in bad situations, but when we're so, when we're so conscientious though about this stuff, it loses just the organic connection. When you go out with friends, you're not like, oh my God, is this red flag happening? Are they going to be this narcissist and terrible person? You're, enjoying the company and seeing what evolves. So I think bringing more of that energy is now scientifically backed up, not just you and I saying this. So that makes me happy to hear that from this conversation.
Yeah, I feel so validated. Thank you, Eli. If anything,
I'm delighted.
Great therapy session for both of us. I feel so validated. I think in the similar vein, Julie, I feel the same way as a takeaway. In dating right now, we see each other as you are here to entertain me and impress me. Dance, monkey, dance. And if I don't like your dance, I'm going to find the next monkey. But what we're talking about here is building, even if the relationship or the date doesn't last past the first date, how do we still lean in to these conversations to build some sort of connection and maybe compatibility. So dance monkey dance. Great. I'm going to now bring out a keyboard, and then you start singing. And now we're going to make this into a whole production that's even better than it was before. And it was something we never even imagined from the beginning. So if we can all start just leaning in a little bit more, and at the end of your dates, if you're still feeling like, oh, there wasn't much, you have to ask, did I try my best in leaning in to these connections? And if you did, then you have your answer. But if you really didn't, we have to take accountability for that.
Yeah.
I love to putting this gut check of like, how did I feel around this person? Was I showing the best self of me or the type of person I want to be, the person that comes alive with friends and trusted people? Like, was that coming out on a date? That's so much more important than the resume that this person might have.
Thank you, Eli, for another wonderful discussion. A lot of thought-provoking thoughts in there. So I know
Thank you so much for having me.
If people want to find out more about you and your work, where can they go?
They could go to elifinkel.com, or they could check out the podcast at lovefactuallypod.com, where we talk about these ideas as they relate to popular romance movies.
Love it.
Super. Thanks again. We're going to wrap up this episode. Stay dateable.